Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question from one of our clients, and the question last week was, my dad is still vulnerable and needs a higher level of monitoring. Why did they put him at a spot so far from the nurse's station? You can check out last week's question by clicking on the link below this video. In today's episode of Your Questions Answered, I want to answer another question and the following question from last week from one of my clients, Anna, as part of my one-on-one consulting and advocacy service. Anna is unhappy with her dad's transfer from ICU to the hospital ward, and she's asking if it's the right place for him to continuously and predictably recover. So today's question is my dad at the right hospital ward for his needs? He seems to be getting less care here. Help. So these are excerpts from email consulting sessions with Anna and myself. So I start with an email from me that is a follow-on from the last week's email. Hi Anna, I'm not surprised by what you are currently experiencing. ICU is such a highly specialized area that you would have noticed the drop in skills and expertise with your dad going to a regular ward. Your observations are absolutely correct that the nurses there would be overwhelmed to look after your dad during such a critical phase of his recovery. The good news is that to this point he seems to be holding his own, either through determination, a little bit of skill from the nurses, and probably through your and your family's presence and guidance. One of my biggest concerns from what you are describing is definitely that ICU is not really keeping an eye on him. You may remember that I mentioned some ICUs in the bigger metropolitan hospitals have an ICU outreach or ICU liaison team to keep an eye on patients who are at risk of ICU readmissions. Without having all the clinical information, I would assume your dad fits the criteria after such a long and arduous ICU stay. It doesn't sound to me like he's out of the woods yet, although please also keep looking at the positives and see how far he has come with all of those unbelievable challenges he had to overcome to get to this point in his recovery. One pattern that emerged throughout your and your dad's challenges is that whenever there was an obstacle or issue, you were never afraid to speak up and seek guidance from a professional like myself. You used what you learned in the process and you applied it with much success. One challenge that my clients often have is that they are too scared, too timid, and too intimidated to implement the strategies, and you clearly have run with all of the advice with much success and results. Therefore, don't change a winning formula. If you are finding something that works, do more of it, not less. All of your observations on the ward are incredibly concerning. What I'm not 100% clear on is if your dad has improved since discharge to the ward or not. Do you think he's going forward or backwards? Also, who is the current treating doctor and what input does this person have? Please also see comments and questions below to your specific questions. Following is from Anna. Hi Patrick, hope you're well. I wanted to update you on Dad's situation and seek your advice as ever, please. Overall, we have sought to keep an open mind, but increasingly we are unhappy with his placement on the new ward. It's a mixed neurology and acute elderly ward, six beds for neuro cases, the rest is acute elderly. It's not one step down from ICU, it's more like 10 steps down from ICU. It's basically auxiliary nurses on the ward. In theory, a nurse is at the desk, but the reality is of course different. A nurse is around, but often very stressed and rushed from our observations. Here is my comment to that. Anna, they probably have a heavy workload with one nurse to 6 or even 8 or 10 patients overnight, and they don't have the specialized training that an ICU nurse went through. Following is from Anna. We were told he would be in a high visibility bed Well, it depends on the interpretation of that. He is in the corner of the room. If the curtain is pulled on the bed next to him and left that way, which of course it is at times during the day and night, he's not high visibility. Okay, Anna, keep holding them accountable for what they told you. High visibility means high visibility. He should be as close to a nurse as possible if that's what they promised you. I'm sure he's higher risk than most other patients on this particular ward. However, they may also look after patients with a stroke if it's a neuro ward. Therefore, they may have other sick patients there. In order to work out how your dad fits their risk or acuity profile, just ask what other high-risk patients they have. Following is from Anna. Dad doesn't have the ability to shout because his voice is still quiet, and we often find his aid call is out of reach for him, i.e. it has slipped to the floor or it is tucked behind him. He needs time to get used to having one, two, after 3 months of one-on-one care with no need to think to press a nurse call button. Okay, Anna, again, that's why he needs to be close to the nurses so they can see him and attend to him when needed. From Anna, he needed his suction tool, and I found it had slipped down behind the bed and was on the floor, which I could see was dusty. It then needed cleaning, of course. Anna, in a situation like this, it won't need cleaning. It needs replacing with a new tool, full stop. If something dropped on the floor in a hospital, usually it needs to be thrown out if it's disposable anyway. From Anna, yes, I agree. And what if he had pulled it up without realizing and put it straight in his mouth? This is a man who has been in ICU for 3 months with compromised immunity and is very vulnerable. Again, Anna, it comes down to being visible to the nurses so they can help him when he needs things. Compromised immunity is just one factor that makes your dad very vulnerable. There are many other factors and they should know this and manage it accordingly. From Anna, when the sister came to top up his water through the nasal feed, I politely asked what his care plan is. The sister said, "What do you mean?" She said in a fairly passive-aggressive tone. I said I'd be really grateful to know what the plan of care and treatment is for Dad now that he's on the ward. I don't know, I will have to go and look. Why doesn't she know? My sister asked discreetly. Anna, she should definitely know the details about your dad's care going forward. There is no excuse there. From Anna. The sister then came back and said briefly, so he's waiting here until a bed in the off-site rehabilitation unit becomes available. They're going to do another swallow test next week. That was it. Anna, is the swallow test necessary for him to go to rehab? It sounds to me like the sooner he can leave, the better. Also, if your dad has private health cover, have you considered going private? From Anna. I asked about his physio. They try to come on Monday to Friday, but they can't guarantee every day. Anna, that's terrible. He will need to keep moving and get out of bed every day. He can't stop mobilizing. Again, private hospital, private rehab might be an option if your dad has private health cover. Patrick, I asked how the microbiology services works. If and when required, the ICU matron told us microbiology do visit the ward and that this would be the case for Dad if needed. Why would microbiology visit? Is there an issue? I simply replied that of course we were mindful of Dad developing another chest infection as ICU had told us he was at high risk. Well, they don't visit here. I'm not aware of them visiting any wards. It might be different in ICU, but we don't have the service here. Anna, that sounds strange to me. Surely they would have to test patients' microbiology if needed. That's a standard hospital service. If one of their patients develops an infection, it would be standard procedure to check microbiology. Patrick, ICU told us how important physio is for Dad's recovery, but he is actually having less physio on this ward. For example, the plan is to mobilize him every day, but he didn't sit in the chair at all yesterday and was in bed all day. Anna, Absolutely. Also, you would have seen by now mobilization, stimulation, physiotherapy, etc. is what got him to this point. Not keeping up the frequency of mobilization would be detrimental for your dad's recovery. Again, the sooner he can go on to specialized rehabilitation, the better. It sounds like currently he's stuck somewhere he doesn't belong to. From Anna. On Friday, he was put in a chair by the bed. A friend came to visit him and found he was getting uncomfortable after being in it for an hour. Eventually, she went to tell them as Dad's legs were extremely painful. She was told the physiotherapists were at lunch and that they would wait 30 minutes at least. She pointed out that's a long time for someone in pain to wait. They came at the 2-hour mark, by which time Dad was worn out from the pain. That is incredibly concerning, Anna. Have you brought that up with the team there? They need to know about your concerns and frustration. From Anna. His breathing seems to be fine. Thank goodness he's got a nasal cannula with oxygen. Do you know how much oxygen he's still on, Anna? He's still very weak and vulnerable in our view. Yes, Anna. He certainly would be after all this time in ICU. Again, maybe private rehabilitation might be the way to go if he has private health cover. Patrick, as you know, by the time I found out about the plan to discharge Dad, it was too late to stop it, even though I tried. Anna, it looks like they moved swiftly once they made up their mind. Given that he's been in this environment now for a week, he must be doing something right in order to be there. So with all of the challenges, don't lose sight either and see how far he's come in all of this. From Anna, we have sought to keep an open mind, but after 6 days of being on the ward, we think we've seen enough. I ask Dad what he thinks about the care and he replies, it's so-so, not all that good. Anna, it's never good compared to ICU, no doubt. There is currently a mismatch between what he was used to in ICU, what he now needs, and what they can provide for him in order to keep moving forward. From Anna, we are worried that Dad's recovery will stagnate, that the reduced physio will undermine all his hard work and that he's at risk of not improving. Anna, that is absolutely a concern. If he's not moving forward, he will go backwards. Therefore, the sooner they can move him into an environment where they can cater to his needs, the better. From Anna, our instincts are telling us that the level of monitoring and care is too much of a step down for Dad. You will recall that just 3 weeks ago, the consultant and matron on duty in ICU told us that Dad was at high risk if transferred to the ward, that Dad was vulnerable and weak with no reserves to draw on, and that they were concerned he would contract an infection, deteriorate and even die there. I remember, Anna, the level of monitoring would be non-existent compared to ICU on the ward. Do you think your dad has no reserves to draw on? Do you think since discharge from ICU he has moved forward or gone backwards? And yet, 2 weeks later they discharged him to the very same ward. Patrick, we do wonder if he's even on the right ward for his needs. It's a neuro and acute elderly ward. We appreciate he has critical illness myopathy, but a large part of the involvement of the neurologist was over his delay in waking up from the coma and the ICU-acquired delirium. He's out of the delirium now, so is this the right place for Dad as he is now? We just don't have the knowledge to question it effectively. The most important questions, Anna, for me at the moment would be, do you think he has improved or deteriorated since discharge from ICU? This will answer the question if he's in the right environment or not. Just because the care is not as good as in ICU, the question remains, can he move forward within the current circumstances and current environment? From Anna, ICU told us they would keep an informal connection with the ward to see how Dad is going. I am tempted to call ICU and tell them my concerns and put the responsibility back to them. Of course, Anna, keep them in the loop and share your concerns. Hopefully they come to the party and take back some ownership. Great, Patrick. We would welcome your help as always in navigating this next challenge. Very best wishes from from Anna. So that's the end of today's consulting session. So how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one? How can you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You will get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision-making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you will learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care, and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle, and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You will get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence in your situation. You will get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered episode, and I'll see you again next week in another update. Make sure you also have a look at our blog section for more tips and strategies, or simply send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Also, have a look at our membership site intensivecaresupport.org for families of critically ill patients in intensive care. You can also call me, find phone numbers on the top of the website. Also, have a look at our ebook section, and you can also get one-on-one consulting and advocacy with me over the phone via Skype, via Zoom and via email by clicking on the relevant tabs on the top of the website. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll talk to you in a few days.